Looks like you're live.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I want to call the State Board of Elections January 2022 meeting to order this morning in the absence of Chairman Chandler, who is not able to join us today due to death in the family. He has asked me to chair the meeting. So the first order of business today is actually going to be to have a nomination and a vote to elect a temporary chair for the purposes of running today's meeting.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Member Lane and a second by Member Johnson. And Member Lane, can I ask you to be specific about who is to chair today's meeting, just so that it's on the record?
Yes, I nominate Deanna Brangers to be the chairman of our State Board of Elections monthly meeting today, January 18th, 2022.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you all. So the next order of business, or what we normally do, is to introduce everyone. So I am Deanna Brangers. I am a member of the State Board of Elections representing Jefferson County. And I'm just going to go as I see everyone on my screen here today. So Member Johnson, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Jerry Johnson, and I'm from Franklin County, Kentucky.
Member Lane.
Good morning. I'm Lynn Lane, and I'm the retired county clerk from Ballard County.
Member Lewis.
James Lewis, retired county clerk, Leslie County.
Member Skolnick.
Morning, everyone. Corey Skolnick, member Jefferson County.
Member Sears.
Good morning, everyone. Dwight Sears, member Pulaski County.
Member Whitehouse.
Sherry Whitehouse, member Bullock County.
And our esteemed Secretary of State.
Good morning, Michael Adams, Secretary of State, non-voting member.
Okay, we also have with us on this call today several of our State Board of Elections staff. I see we have Karen Sellers, our Executive Director, Richard House, our Assistant Executive Director, Sheila Walker, our Board Secretary, Rachel Pointer, our financial guru, also Jason Denny with the Clerks Association. Welcome, Jason. And Taylor Brown, our General Counsel for the State Board of Elections. Just looking on my screen. And Tom Watson, who is with our IT department. Did I miss anyone, Karen? Okay.
I believe you have everyone.
Good deal. So we will get right into our business. The first order of business is to approve the minutes from our December 21st, 2021 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Approve.
Okay, I have a motion by Member Lewis. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Member Skolnick. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. Those minutes have been approved. The next order of business is the approval or ratification of our County Board of Elections replacements pursuant to KRS 117.035. Karen, should we take these one at a time or as a group? I can't remember how we've done that. This one's a different issue, I think.
I think Lawrence County should probably be separate. I believe it's on the agenda just below. But the three, we could do the three. Those are all three ratifications if the board chooses to do those three, and the Lawrence County is an approval. So
okay, so the first three, Shelby, Boyd, and Caldwell, are all ratifications. Do you have a motion to approve those ratifications?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Member Lane. Is there a second?
Second.
And second, and I didn't hear where that one came from.
Jerry Johnson.
Jerry, okay. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on these ratifications? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by voting aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is a discussion and vote on Lawrence County Board of Elections Republican member removal and replacement. Karen, do you want to give a brief summary of this?
Yes, they have their Republican member is needing to be replaced due to significant health issues. All the appropriate paperwork was submitted to SBE. General counsel is aware, has reviewed the paperwork. Bobby Workman is the first name on the list. He was more or less their, that would have been their next choice to replace this person had he not been taken off. He's a secondary member that they would approve. So they are requesting Bobby Workman take the role on the Republican, as the Republican member on their county board of elections in Lawrence County. And that will need to be approved.
Does anyone have any questions for Karen about this? Okay, hearing none. Do we have a motion to approve the Lawrence County removal and replacement for their Board of Elections?
So moved.
Motion by member Lewis. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by member Skolnick. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. It looks like next on our agenda is our financial report. So I will turn it over to Rachel Pointer.
Morning.
Morning.
Not much to report here on this reporting period. The main financial component during December was to turn in our federal financial reports to EAC as well as the progress narratives. We did turn all of those in. EAC did ask a couple of questions, but they both related to our loss of interest over the reporting period. And we described that and gave them the numbers, and they are now in the process of approving those reports. So we hope to hear that all of those reports have been approved by the end of January. Expenses are pretty steady throughout December, and we're just looking forward to getting into this quarter and looking forward to the distribution of HAVA funds for voting equipment. Does anyone have any questions about any of the prepared financials? Okay.
Any questions for Rachel? Okay, hearing none, we will move on. In our agenda, our next item is administrative regulation review, and I will turn it over to Taylor Brown for that presentation.
Thank you. Morning, everybody. This is brought back from last time. This actually last in December, I mentioned that some of our admin regs are in various states of expiration or needing editing after 574 or just changes we've made since last time we looked at them. So I included, it starts in your board book. It looks to be page 22. And I just realized that this morning, and I apologize. When I did it, I tried to make the changes in red to stand out so you could see them without using the fine tooth comb, but it looks like when we scanned them, they didn't come through in color. But really, it's like if you look at the first one, we're just changing the SBE 01 as it stood. We had the 803 version in our regs, but we've changed that over the last 19 years, so we got to update that. And then the rest of them, like I say, and you can see this for yourself, that in, for example, 4070, subsection 2 needed to change the subsection 5, and subsection 3 needed to change the subsection 6. So there's really nothing too substantive in the changes here. It's really just kind of housekeeping, I guess. So that's really it. But I'm more than happy to answer any changes or any questions about any of the specific changes that are there if anybody has any.
Anyone have any questions or anything they'd like to add?
Okay. So if there are no questions, then I would ask for the board to note and approve me taking those to LRC to move forward with them.
Can I ask just a quick question?
Please.
Absolutely.
Are any of these needing to be done on an emergency basis to be in place in time for the primary, or can they all go through as ordinary regulations?
I would leave. That's a very good question. I think that some of them already being expired, that maybe we do the ones that are expired as emergency just to have them. There are some that are not expired that would go ordinarily as ordinary regs just because they're going to expire coming up in 22. So yes and no. I could be more specific with which each one, if you'd like me to. I can look that up where they stand.
Does the board need to vote in a different way for the emergency regs than the ordinary regs, just as a matter of procedure? I don't know the answer.
If it would make everybody more comfortable, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. The the ones that expire later on this year, I could tell you are 3040, 4120, 4180, and 4170. And then the ones that would be emergency would be 3030, 4070, 4130, 4140, and 5010, if that helps. So then I guess I would be asking then for 2 votes, one for authority to proceed with emergency regs and the other with ordinary regs.
That seems to me as that might be the cleanest way to go with that, is to vote on the ones that need to go forward as emergency to get them back in place, and then the ones that can go through the normal process.
I would move authorization to move those emergency regs forward.
Okay, we have a motion to move the emergency regs forward. I'm just going to go through those numbers one more time. Taylor, please correct me if I missed any of those. I just want to make sure it's all on the record. That would be 3030, 4070, 4130, 4140, and 5010.
Correct.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Yes. Go
Is there
ahead.
any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. So the next order of business there will be then to vote on those that can go forward under the regular process. I'll restate those numbers just for clarification. That is 3040, 4120, 4180, and 4170. Is that the correct numbers?
It is.
Okay. Do we have a motion to move those forward under the regular reg process?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by member
Yeah.
Lane. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by member Lewis. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please signify by voting aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you,
Thank you.
Taylor, for all your work on that.
Thank you.
Okay, the next thing on our agenda today is discussion and vote on the county plans for Jefferson County for their special election that will be held on February 22nd, 2022. So that one is coming up on us pretty quickly. Karen, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. We mean Taylor, Richard, and myself, reviewed the county plan for Jefferson County special election, which they did submit timely based on the law, to be held on February 22nd. That plan has 2 early voting locations in the county for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, prior to election day on the 22nd. On election day, they are opening all of their precincts independently, with the exception of one location that will have 4 precincts there, which has been the pre-pandemic that's how they've had those 4 precincts in the past, pre-pandemic, in prior to 2020. So that was not really a change, but all the other precincts in District 42 for the special will be open on election day.
Excellent. Does anyone have any questions about Jefferson County's plan for the special election?
One point, I know there's been a discussion on the e-poll book issue for Jefferson County on this special election. Has that been settled? Which device they will use? Does anyone know?
I think we're gonna,
Taylor, okay.
sorry, I'll defer to Karen if she'd like, but I was just gonna say, I think we're gonna discuss that in the executive session.
Oh, okay, sorry.
For the issue.
I would only ask for formal approval of their plan as presented today, if the board would choose to do that.
Okay. Any other questions regarding Jefferson County's plan? Do we have a motion to approve
Motion
it?
to approve their submitted plan for Jefferson County.
I second.
Motion by member Sears, second by member Johnson. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Jefferson County's plan has been approved. The next item on our agenda is the discussion and vote on our 2022 county plans that have been submitted. We had several that have been sent out. Took a little bit of time to review those. I'm going to turn that over to Karen and let her and Richard address those plans so that they can adequately answer any questions we may have.
Thank you. As I sent out, there were 28 plans that were sent out for approval for this meeting. I know there are questions. We've tried to answer some questions along the way over the weekend. We appreciate the time it takes to review these plans. During the course of reviewing the plans, Taylor, Richard, and I made numerous phone calls to counties just to maybe make some clarifications on whether it's where their early voting is, are they opening all precincts, maybe some clarification on some of the narratives. And while we do our best to do that, I'm sure there could be, some other areas that we missed, which is why we appreciate your all's complete review. I think we did have a couple of questions. Richard can clarify those, where he was here first thing this morning, getting some of those answers today. And he also had prepared a very nice spreadsheet that outlined each county, each of the 28 counties, what their number of precincts, their number of registered voters, their general turnout in 2020, and their early voting or consolidated or opening all precincts or vote centers by county. And I hope that the board found that very informative as you tried to go through these plans. I didn't know if you want me to try to go through each plan independently, or if you do have some questions, maybe we can go ahead and start that piece. I'll be at the board's pleasure on that.
Why don't we find out, any of our board members, does anyone have any questions about the plans as you reviewed them? I know I had questions about just little details that I emailed Karen and Richard about that were all, handled really quickly. I got answers really quickly this morning. And so anyway, if any board member has a question regarding anything that you saw that you weren't quite certain of in any of the county plans, now would be the time to get an answer to that question.
Can I make I'm sorry, after you.
I was just going to ask a question on, and this is an example, just one example, but on Bourbon County, it notes there are 16 precincts. And then when you look at their plan details, they are proposing 1 early voting and then 2 voting centers for election day. So the 2 centers for election day, does that include all 16 of the other precincts, or would those precincts be in addition to the 16?
They are going to, Karen, I'll go ahead. If they are going to run their election with 2 voting centers, where anyone in the county can go to either 2 sites on election day. So they will not have precincts open. They will use voting centers for that purpose. So anybody in the county can go to those 2 voting centers on election day, either one.
Secretary Adams?
I've got a more of a request than a question, but could we, at least for myself, I don't know if other members feel the same way, I'd like to get these draft plans on a rolling basis instead of getting them Friday night of a holiday weekend all at once, 28 of them, just so my team can do our due diligence and look at these closely, have the time to be able to do that. We should also, when we present our agenda to the public and the media, I think we should itemize which county plans we're voting on. Last meeting, we voted on some plans and didn't vote on some other plans. I think we should just be very clear in the agenda what we're voting on and not voting on.
Very good suggestions, Secretary Adams. And I apologize for the lateness of getting the remaining plans. It took us a little bit of time, and I will also mention that we still have, I think Richard may know the number, but we still have more than half the counties remaining to get their plans in. And I believe the date that they're due is February 16th. So what I will do my best to do is we'll try to look at them each week and maybe get a few out each week as we look toward the next board meeting, if that would help. And I'm sure it would. And I appreciate the reaching out about that. You're absolutely right. We will try to do a better job.
Thanks. Actually, your idea is better than my idea. Instead of kind of a piecemeal, one here, I think maybe once a week, just here's 5 or 10 or whatever it is actually a much better idea. I don't recall, I know it's on our first page of our board book, but I don't remember, I have it in front of me. What is our next meeting date? And are we going to need to have a special meeting in advance of that to approve more plans or after that?
I think our next meeting date's tentatively scheduled. We'll have to approve that through the board today, but I think it's tentatively scheduled for February 15th.
So we think we might be able to get all these knocked out in that meeting, or do you think we'll need another meeting? Don't know yet.
I'll defer that to the temporary chair or to.
I think it may be too early to say. It's a lot of it's probably going to depend on how quickly those counties, if the deadline's the 16th and they're all, we have a bunch that are waiting till that time, we may end up not having them all, because as you know, it takes quite a bit of time to go through those and look at all the details. So I think we're a little bit at the mercy of the counties as to how quickly they send those in.
We still got like 60 or 70 counties left, right?
Right.
Yeah. Thank you.
I will say, as part of my report, but I'll go ahead and interject that here. We will be SBE will be at the KCCA meeting on Thursday, and part of what we were going to do and maybe some announcements or information was to go over and remind any counties about the deadline to try to get those in as quickly as possible. And I might defer this to Taylor. I think the submission has to be by February 16th. The date of final approval, Taylor, is it?
Right. The 90 days is a filing deadline, not a approval deadline. So, I mean, ideally, it'd be nice to have as many of them as we could before the next board meeting. But as long the way the reg is written right now, as long as they're in to the board 90 days before, then they've met their obligation.
Thank you, Taylor.
So maybe when you are with the clerks, you could just put kind of a pretty please in there to not maybe swamp us with everything all at the very last minute if we can prevent it. It'd just be really nice. I know everybody's got a lot on their plate, but we're all in the same boat here. We've all got a job to do, and hopefully we can expedite that as much as possible. Would there be anything if we got a large group of them on the 16th that would necessitate a special meeting, Taylor? Or would that just be held over until our March?
I'd hate to say concretely one way or the other. I think it would depend on the circumstances. If we get 70 on the 16th, then maybe. If it's just a handful of them, I don't see why we couldn't hold them off till March.
Right.
But
I just, they're also waiting on approval
right
to implement everything too.
Right.
Let me ask another question if I could, and just from individual board members and from Taylor and Karen and Richard. It concerns me that with some areas that we've gone fully voting centers and have made drastic reductions in the number of access points for voting within counties. Now, I don't have detailed understanding of how far that may be for somebody within the county or how far they have to travel. And my understanding had been that the voting centers were more of an enhancement to the overall voting process rather than a replacement of. I may be wrong, and so I want to ask that question if others have concerns about that. And if you go from 16 down to 2 voting centers, that appears to be rather limiting. Now, I really like the fact that you can come from anywhere and you can vote at those, but that seems to be, again, that would be an enhancement rather than a take the place of in my mind. So the question's twofold, I guess. One is, how much authority resides within the county to make that decision? And number 2, how much beyond that then resides with us? I mean, I certainly want to afford counties the opportunity to make the decisions that are most important to their people. At the same time, I think we have a responsibility to make sure that those decisions are being made in as comprehensive of a manner as possible. So with that, I'll leave it. I'll just ask the others for your opinion, and we'll go from there.
Secretary Adams, would you like to address that? Because I know a lot of that came out of House Bill 574.
Sure, thank you. Well, I think there's 2 questions. One is, what's the public policy purpose of the vote center? And then number 2, what's the board's responsibility? Let me take those in reverse order. The board is basically functionally in a gubernatorial posture with respect to these plans. You can veto any one of them that you want, or more likely you can use the veto power to have some leverage to get some plans changed while they're still in the draft stage. If you remember, in the primary in 2020, the board approved all the plans, and when we came back in the general, the governor and I were given authority to veto them as an additional backstop. And I think that was helpful. because I think it showed the clerks, look, you could actually get these plans rejected, and they did a better job in November than they did in June of producing voting locations. So you all, and this actually predates 574. By law, for decades, the board's had the power to reject a county amendment to its precinct model to consolidate precincts or what have you. And it's important for you all to be able to do that. I think there was some email traffic over the weekend about how it's the local officials that are held accountable. That's true to an extent, but I'm held accountable too, and so are you all to a degree. And some of the clerks are not going to be held politically accountable because they're retiring. So there's really no one who is. So I'm not out to pick on any county. I think they're doing a great job, but I would encourage the board to use that veto power if it feels it needs to get some better coverage in some of these counties. There's a reason it's been given to you in the statute. There's a reason it was provided decades ago in the statute, so that you all would be basically a backstop to ensure that these plans are sufficient. With respect to the vote centers, I agree completely that these were not designed to completely replace the precinct-based model. They were designed to be an enhancement. The timeliness of them has been pretty fortuitous in the sense that there was simply no way that we could have had all the precincts open in 2020. It was completely impossible with the locations closing for COVID, with the poll workers quitting for COVID. It just wasn't possible. And the vote centers were a nice crutch, if you will, to help us still find ways to make sure voters could get in and out and safely vote. What we've seen in most of these counties' plans, not all of them, I think we've only seen, of all the county plans that we have seen and that you all are looking at approving, I think there's only, I'd say a handful, but maybe even fewer than that, one or two tops, that have actually reduced the number of locations beyond what we had in 2020. The vast majority of counties are actually expanding voting locations beyond what they had. Some are opening all or most of their precincts. Some are opening some precincts plus adding more vote centers. I think as we get past COVID one of these days, what we'll see ultimately, maybe the middle of this decade or hopefully sooner, is what Member Johnson was talking about, which is vote centers as an enhancement, not as a replacement. That said, part of the sales job, if you will, in getting the vote centers passed was not just that it's better for the voters, which it clearly is, but also that it's better for the local governments because you can more efficiently get your voters in and out. So what's right for a county is totally dependent on that county. To use Harlan County as an example, vote centers are not a good idea for Harlan County. You can't just have everyone go to the county seat. You have to go around a mountain to get to your voting location. But there are some counties where the population are very centralized, and so there a vote center makes sense. So the overall purpose, I think, certainly is an enhancement, not a replacement. But we're also understanding that in COVID world, it's very hard to get poll workers, most of whom are senior citizens. My hope is this won't be a permanent crutch, but for the meantime, I understand why some counties are using it that way.
Very helpful. I think my comfort level, listen, I'm really very much like when possible to defer to those folks on the front line who deal with this on a regular basis. There's no way for me to have an absolute understanding of how many people are available. In years gone by, even way before COVID, in my time in Harlan, there were times that we looked at bringing precincts together and doing things. We didn't have vote centers per se, but so I understand that. And I guess for me, is it fair to say that the approval for these plans is relative to 2022 only? Or, I mean, will they be required to do this again in 23? Or is this the plan until we require additional plans sometime in the future?
Taylor, I'm going to defer that based on what the law does say. Most of the plans that have been submitted to us say 2022 on their paperwork.
Sorry, getting couldn't get off mute there. Yeah, the forms that they're submitting ask which election that the plan is for, and the plans that have been submitted before the board right now are just for the primary coming up. We'll have another round of this before the general, and then every election will have a new round of plans submitted.
I just quickly add to that. That's what the law says. A county can't permanently alter its voting model. It has to get explicit permission every election. So it's not just that the form says that it does, it's also that the law says that. So we will be doing this going forward every election.
Then I think I'll be more comfortable in deferring to this. Again, we're still in a very haphazard situation in the state. We don't know what it's going to look like on election day versus where it is today. So I feel more comfortable knowing that we're going to be able to look at the primary and how well these plans worked as we began to talk about the fall general election. So thanks for taking time to let me ask those questions. That's just been bothering me a little bit. And the last thing I want to do is to vote for something that restricts access. And but at the same time, I want to be able to recognize that local officials have a more on the ground kind of understanding. So thank you all very much.
And if you all will allow me to add, because I've seen the back end of all of this, I'll just give you some things that maybe make you feel a little bit better. When we had one voting center in Davis County for the primary, we were able to vote 4,200 people through a line that they didn't have to wait in line more than 15 minutes. So vote center models do have a propensity to move along voters a lot faster. These numbers that I give you, so that's why I included those 2020 general election numbers, because they're probably the largest that those counties have faced, so that you can kind of get a perspective of that. I do know that, and I having worked for a county clerk's office, I do understand that they have a more, just like you said, more of a knowledge of their own environment. And to the secretary's point, most of them will be held responsible for this plan. Some of them may not, because of they're going on to retirement. But for the most part, that'll be a big thing. And that's something we take into consideration when we were looking at the plans. And so that's just some kind of idea that you can think about that. Davis County had 85 precincts a few years ago. They went to 56 when they consolidated. And then for this upcoming plan, they're going to have 15 voting centers throughout the county. So that's just for convenience for whoever, if they were working on one end of the county, they could get to a voting center faster than another. And I'm sure that's taken into consideration with all the county clerks. So just something to add on to that.
Thank you, Richard.
Madam Chairman.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Of course, I would never try to second guess county clerks. They, for the most part, have a good handle on the situation in their counties. But I do feel uncomfortable with having 11,000 voters on average go to one location on election day, which I see one county has here. I would hope that they logistically can handle a huge turnout of, even if you go by their 2020 totals, that that would be 6,000 voters showing up. But I'm really concerned for the voters of our state, and hopefully this will not deter turnout in some areas, which I feel like there's a possibility that will happen. It may encourage, it may deter. I think that's something we'll have to evaluate over time. But I feel like that, county clerks and county boards of election generally have a good handle on their clientele, so to speak, and know what the situation is in their county better than we can by looking in from the outside. But even saying that, some of these are suspect in my mind, I may be totally off base at the number of locations that are proposed for the population and registered voters rather that they have.
Thank you, Member Lewis. I don't want to call out any county, really not trying to call anybody on the carpet, but I believe the one county that you may be referring to is that Carroll. I know they had one.
No.
Okay. I think Carroll only had one voting. Am I right, Richard? I'm trying to remember from my review.
Yeah,
And,
Carroll
correct.
only has one. And
They put some pretty detailed explanation into their plan as to why they chose to go that route. But Richard, do you want to speak to, I know you and Karen have worked with these counties anywhere where they do have a reduced number to kind of help the board to better understand, some of the reasoning behind those decisions?
The Carroll County was the one we probably struggled with the most because of the numbers and things. But she provided a detailed description, and we went back to her about 2 or 3 times to kind of to touch bases with her and try to do something. And that's why, and I guess that's why we look over things, and you guys are the ones that will approve them. So, and we can give you as much data as we can on it and explanation. And she did give a very thorough explanation. We looked through the Bourbon County, for instance. We did that, and I will tell you this: when we're looking at it, it's difficult because when you're looking at maps that they provide and the scale of those maps, you think something's larger than what it really is. You figure out that there's a state park that takes up a large chunk of the county, so there's just different factors that go into it. But anything that we had struggled with, we called back and got some clarification on. So we're not just passing these through. We're doing. That's why it takes so long, and that's why y'all got so many at one time too. So
I did notice that Daniel Boone National Forest took up a significant amount of land on a couple of those maps. So it definitely impacts the way the geography is and where your voters are located.
There was only one other county, Nicholas County, and Richard had a good conversation with them as well. They have one vote center with 5 precincts. And Richard did speak with the clerk about that as well. And we felt that was, again, an appropriate use of one vote center in their county.
And specifically for that one, that's been going on since 2015, that they had this location at a school, and they put 2 precincts and a cafeteria and 3 in the gymnasium. And only thing that they were going to do different was they were going to share the ADA required equipment for precincts. So they'll have 1 in the cafeteria and 1 in the gym. And that'll be the only real difference to what they've done since 2015. So it was kind of hard to argue at that point. So.
Okay, are there any other questions of Richard and Karen of the plans that have been presented? And then I'm going to ask, before we take any action, if one of you wouldn't care to read out the names of every county that has been submitted. Just speaking to Secretary Adams' comments earlier, I think it's a good idea to have those added into the permanent record for our meeting minutes and for the public that may be watching the meeting either now or on YouTube at a later time.
I'm happy to read those. I think that's a good idea. So I will take that. Allen County, Boone County, Bourbon County, Bracken County, Breathitt County, Callaway County, Carroll County, Clinton County, Gallatin County, Grayson County, Greenup County, Harrison County, Hart County, Laurel County, Leslie County, McCreary County, Nelson County, Nicholas County, Ohio County, Oldham County, Pendleton County, Rockcastle County, Scott County, Simpson County, Spencer County, Todd County, Warren County, and Webster County. And to Mr. Secretary's note as well, we will list those on the agenda going forward. And I think that, again, is another way when we publicize the agenda, that notice will be publicized as well at the time before the plans come to the board.
Thank you.
We will make sure we do that next time.
And one other point that we were talking about earlier, I know that there was some concern about the language, that how these counties are using the term vote center, how they're using the term consolidated. We're going to try to, and I guess we'll use our time on Thursday to kind of push that issue to get everybody on the same verbiage from the law to make sure that they're using the terms appropriately. And we will ask if there are any, and I know that Deanna and Ms. Springers, you brought up too, that we'll kind of go back in touch with those counties and get them to adjust the words in their plans as far as no excuse absentee voting, terms like that not to be used. So if that's okay with the board to do that.
Yes, you may have been on an email earlier where I just noted that some of the counties are using different terminology. Some have used no excuse absentee voting, which we do not have no excuse absentee voting in the state of Kentucky. And while I think the intent of what they were putting into their plan was clear, I just think it's really important that we're all using the same language, because while they are election administrators, we are election administrators, we are working in this, the general public is not. And we want to make sure that they are very clear on what we have here in Kentucky. So I just think it's important for us all to be speaking from the same page.
And like Richard said, we had already spoken this morning about this maybe being part of the KCCA presentation, question and answer that we do on Thursday.
And I will assure you that Taylor has said that several times at clerk meetings. So he's tried to get that point through, but we'll do a better job of that.
Well, it's new for everybody. And, sometimes you hear something and it just kind of sticks with you, even if it's not 100% correct. Like I said, I think the intent is the same across the board. I just think the language is really important that we get it universal. Is there any other questions or comments or anything about the plans that have been submitted? If not, I think it is time for us to have a vote on the plans that have been submitted. Is there a motion to approve the plans?
Motion.
Motion by member Whitehouse. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by member Sears. Is there any further discussion on any of these county plans? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. The county plans that have been presented at this meeting have been approved. The next item on our agenda is the ERIC system. So I'll turn that over to Karen. Is that going to be you?
Well, I will start, but it's actually Taylor and Tom that I would have heard. The ERIC is the Election Registration and Information Center. And this has been really Taylor and Tom's team are the piece that have been very instrumental in our process here. So if you don't mind, Taylor and Tom, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Karen. And also shout out to our new staff member, Sarah Forsyth has been really helpful in all our ERIC activities. So as y'all know, we are a part of ERIC. I want to say there are 20 some odd states that are also members, and the District of Columbia as well. Right now, we've got two big things going on with ERIC, and it has to do with the various reports they provide. The first part, I guess, I'll take it this way because we actually have something later on this afternoon dealing with this with Ohio. It's what they call the in-state duplicates report. And basically, we're comparing notes with other states that are members of ERIC. So ERIC has run a report, and it looks like John Voter, with a birth date of July 4th, 1976, voted in Kentucky and Ohio. Here's basically the information that we have. Maybe you in Ohio would like to discuss that. So that's that aspect of it. Like I said, we've got a meeting today. We've done a number of states. We have a number of states to go, but that's been helpful. That'll eventually lead to cleaning up our roles, which is the goal of ERIC, of being a member of ERIC, I should say, which is what we're going to do with that, which we hope to do with the other part of the reports, and that's you get deceased reports, in-state update reports, change of address reports, a couple other ones. And we requested those from ERIC last month in December, and have got those back. And Tom and his team are in the process of starting that, and that's going to lead to some more postcard mailings, the 8D2s, all that stuff, which is going to cost money. It's going to cost a lot of money. That's just, I bring that up. That's something we need to, as a board, I think, remember as we go forward, because we're new in ERIC, and I'm sure everybody did think about it, but now it's actually, time to pay for the postcards. So we're seeing that firsthand, that it really is expensive, but ultimately it will be worth it because, like I say, it will help us clean up our roles. And if anybody has any questions about membership with ERIC, I can answer those questions. As to some of the technical stuff, I would probably defer to Tom and his team.
Does anyone have any questions of Taylor regarding ERIC?
I've got a question. What is our timeline to do this next mailing?
So we've got to do it. There's the statutory cutoff for you have to do 90 days before the election cycle, and that's also echoed in the ERIC membership agreement, that once we request the reports from ERIC, we need to act on them within 90 days. So I'd have to look at the calendar, and Tom, I don't know if you have that date in front of you. I don't have it pulled up or calculated off the top of my head, but we got them back. I'd like to say it was the week or two before Christmas, maybe the 17th is when we got them. So December, January, February, March, probably mid to late March, I think, is when we're hoping to have everything resolved from those reports, and then that'll lead to a next mailing.
I will also add that we've been in contact with Bluegrass Mailing. Bluegrass is the vendor that we use, that we have a master agreement with, to produce and the cards on our behalf. And I'm sure everyone's aware there's a lot of supply issues going on. So we have reached out to them and given them an approximate number of the cards that we're going to need so they can be prepared to send them out timely on our behalf, because some of those deliveries for paper goods are behind. I can defer to Tom, but I know he and his team were trying to get that number as closely as they could to Bluegrass, maybe as early as this week, so we can at least make sure we have what we need ordered and be prepared to send timely.
So the goal is to mail these out in the window between the primary and the general, or I should say the window between the primary and say 1st of August or so, right? Because we have blackout periods where we can't do a mailing. So basically the middle of May through the 1st of August is our sweet spot, right?
Correct.
Mr. Secretary,
Yes, sir.
I noticed last year, I think 100,000 people were taken off the roads. How big a role did Eric play in that?
Well, I'll defer to the staff, but I'll tell you what I know, which is there's kind of two types of removals based on death. One of them is twice a week the board gets from the Bureau of Vital Statistics a list of death certificates that have been issued, and so that goes on consistently. And so basically every month when there's a release of the number of deceased voters taken off, that's reflected. Beyond that, we have other matches that are done, whether through ERIC or through Social Security. And that's where you see these big lumps, these lump sum numbers come in. So for example, I think maybe September, October, there were, I want to say 10 or 11,000 dead voters that were discovered through that process who came off. And these are folks that had not been removed through the other process at the state level. Did I say all of that correctly, Karen and Taylor?
I believe that's correct. And Tom, his staff takes those lists and they manage the purge. And Tom, I believe Mr. Secretary is correct on that. We received a lump group, and that's why it seems so significant in one short period of time.
Could I just add there? I think even though these processes are pretty similar, the people that the state gets notice of on a regular basis, I think that really helps us keep up to date with very current passings of voters. But these lump sum larger numbers that come through other mechanisms, I think those are probably more useful in helping us find people who were missed previously. Does that make sense?
I think it does. I happen to know, just from having served on a local board of election, that there was a time where the regular sending wasn't quite so regular. That has obviously changed and is being done very quickly now. But there was a time where that wasn't the case. So I think Eric is helping do the catch up with a lot of that.
This is Tom. I don't have my camera on because I'm having my floors replaced, and so the place is a wreck. But yeah, all of that is basically correct. And Deanna, your comments are correct. But don't forget that the NVRA program and the lawsuit and all of that together. But the process itself is a lengthy one. So we haven't had a big increase in anything but deaths. And the deaths, Eric has helped a little bit with that, but it's coming because of the process. It takes 4 or 5 years for those to catch up. So there will be a bigger number in the future that you can talk to Karen or Taylor about, or me. But yes, it's an ongoing process. And my point is that the impact of ERIC won't be felt for a few years yet. It's a process of removal. So we have to make sure that the voters' rights are respected and all of that.
Hey, Tom, could I second me on this if you agree, but the real value of ERIC, there is value in spotting deceased voters, but the real value of ERIC is spotting the alive voters who moved out of our state and registered to vote in some other state. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are several mechanisms that ERIC uses to help us find those. They look at our DMV records. They look at other states' DMV records. They look at voter records here and in the other states, and they use the Postal Service as a totally separate one. That's called the NCOA report. So there are 3 reports that deal with that, and it takes a lot of data juggling. And yes, it results in knowing that we have suspicion, a good suspicion that people have either moved out of the county or moved out of the state, and therefore we can take the appropriate action.
Yeah, the sort of ongoing daily removal of voters that we can do, that we're permitted to do under federal law, certainly we've been doing, but the eye-popping numbers of potentially hundreds of thousands of people, we can't do that under the law by snapping our fingers. We have to wait, of course, through the mass mailings. We did one in 2020, and we're doing another now in 2022. And under federal law, state law as well, but under federal law, which governs voter registration, we have to wait and send each of these voters 2 notices that are 2 federal election years apart. And so we sent one in 2020 and May of 2020, and we will send another this spring or summer. And so if the voter is sent those notices and the voter does not respond to a notice, does not vote, does not change registration information to the new address, and so forth, then and only then do we have permission under the federal law to remove that voter without explicit consent of that voter. And so sometime in the next, before 2024, either later this year or sometime next year, we will be doing not just the ongoing daily maintenance that we've done, but also one of these, for lack of a better term, purges that will have a large number of people included. It'll be a big number, but we are following all the protocols that we have to follow under federal law before we do that. And that's what this process is for.
Yes, that's correct, Secretary. Thank you.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
Karen, is the board tracking, or have you been able to see an increase in voter registration as part of ERIC? Because I know they identify people who are potentially eligible to vote but not registered, and they do a mailing of cards, I think, out to those voters. Are we tracking those that come in as a result of that aspect of ERIC?
Over to Karen.
Right. That will be another one of the cards I believe we'll be mailing soon, right, Tom? That will be those not registered but eligible to register to vote. I'm not sure that the last mailing that we did on that we actually saw a significant tracking of those that did register to vote. Tom, do you think we could do that if it were someone that registered because they received the card, the ERIC card that said you are eligible but not registered to vote?
If I'm understanding the question correctly, in other words, the eligible but unregistered ERIC mailing, which we sent last year and we'll be doing another one next year. Can we track the effect of that? Is that basically what we're asking?
Yes.
No, there's no real mechanism to do that. but they do kind of watch. We had some statistical analysis done, and it looked like there was like zero impact.
Thank you.
We sent around 500,000 of those, by the way, very expensive. So
Yeah.
That's right.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments regarding Eric? Okay, hearing none, I guess we can move to our next item on the agenda. And that will be KCCA. So, Mr. Denny, you're up.
How are you all? Good. I don't have very much today. We are, I guess the word is anxiously awaiting the redistricting bill and see how it moves forward. As you know, Anderson County was one of those counties that got split right up the middle congressionally by some middle of some streets in the middle of a subdivision. Ashley's the line. So we're waiting to see what we're going to do with our precinct boundaries, split ballots, things like that. If this is to pass or be challenged or who knows what. So that's about all the KCCA has got right now. I know there are several counties still working on their plans. I've been listening to all that conversation, and I do thank you all for those approvals. My plan is submitted now. Actually was working on it and submitted it to Karen while I was sitting here watching. I will say this, that these plans are personal by county. And we as boards and county clerks do realize we know our counties. I think I appreciated Jerry's comments that we need to be careful, but we also know that many of us were using consolidated school buildings even before the 2020 virus. We were already had 3, 4, 5 precincts in buildings already. And we're doing it on election day, one day. We do feel, based on other state models, that there will be quite a few early voters in that Thursday, Friday, and Saturday option. We are waiting on maybe some cleanup legislation in House Bill 574. We're hoping for most of us are waiting on clarification on what hours that we might need to be open. There's a disparity there and not very any specifics. So while some clerks would like the options, I think statewide it will probably benefit us all to have set hours for those days. So we're waiting to see what happens there with that cleanup legislation. In Anderson County, I feel certain that in the 4 days, the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Tuesday, the vote centers that we proposed will more than adequately handle the voter turnout. We have, in one of the buildings I proposed, we have voted double the amount of people that I believe we will have on any election day in the future. So we're planning ahead, but just look at each plan, call the clerks, talk them through it just like Karen and Richard and Taylor have done. If you have any questions, because sometimes as we write things down, we're seeing it in our heads, but you all can't see our vision. So I think it's good that we have these conversations, that you all talk to us one-on-one when approving these plans to be reassured that we have the correct plan in place. So thank you all once again for the time on the agenda.
Thank you, Jason. Okay, the next item on our agenda is a report from Secretary Adams.
Morning, everybody. I just have one comment to make. I gave a media interview on Friday. Story ran yesterday about absentee voting with respect to the tornado damage and people being relocated. I just want to clarify for anyone watching, any voters or any media, that being able to vote absentee is based on a number of factors, and one of those is not being in your county of residence on election day. To be specific, if you are a resident of Hopkins County or Graves County or so forth, and you have had to relocate because of the tornadoes, you were able to vote absentee. That's not something that I've made up or the board's made up. That's a longstanding right that you've had under state law in Kentucky. Is you have the option, if you have moved to some other county, you can register and vote there if you wish, but you don't have to do that. You can still vote in your home county. If you've got an intent to return to your home county and you're still on the rolls in your home county, you can request an absentee ballot. You can do that certainly from your clerk, or more likely, as you've relocated, you can use the portal, which will be launching here soon for the primary. So I just want to clarify for all voters, especially those in Western Kentucky, if you've had to relocate recently, you still have your right to vote in your home county. What the law provides for is a standard of intent to return. If you live temporarily in another locale, you can still vote in your home county. But think of it being like a college student away to college and still wanting to vote at home. You're treated the same way by state law. So you still have that option if you choose. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Secretary. The next item on our agenda is our executive director report. So I will turn it over to Karen to offer up her report.
Thank you. I have not a whole lot this morning as well. We've done a big bulk by doing the county plans and some of the things that have gone on. That's been the biggest part of our month, a lot of that. One other area that we're keeping an eye on is the election legislation that is right now being introduced in the House and Senate. Richard is doing a very good job of as we find these bills, he's kind of making a list of what some of the areas are that the bill is about. And probably this afternoon, we've been asked by LRC to give some financial impact on some of this legislation that has been introduced. And Rachel, I'm going to include Tom, Taylor, Richard, and myself are going to try to get some of that summary over to LRC, because certainly some of this legislation would have a significant impact on elections, on county clerks, and would have a significant impact on SBE. So we are monitoring that pretty closely now. Again, just to reiterate, our team will be going to the KCCA meeting on Thursday. And one of the areas that we mentioned, and Taylor has, we'll follow up again on some of the clarification about the date we need the plans submitted. And any questions they might have, and try to get, some consistency again in some of the language. One of the other things that we had planned to do at this meeting and had talked to Jason Denny about was beginning our training on the new election law out of House Bill 574. We will probably do some of that, but Mr. Denny's also asked if we can defer some of that time to discuss redistricting, if that's appropriate, and some of the challenges that, the clerks are going to face and what we can do to help in that way with them. So we'll probably have a little twofold. I think we've got most of the afternoon, if I'm correct, and I see Jason shaking his head.
1 to 4.
And more if we need it, or if you would. Okay. So we're prepared to go, and we do enjoy going to these meetings monthly. It really gives us some good interaction, and I hope that the clerks feel the same way as we do as a team here. So wanted to follow up on the voting equipment funding. We hope that we can have the memorandum of agreements out by the end of January. And get those returned to us. The board still will have the final approval on that distribution when those memorandums of agreement come back from either the fiscal court or the county clerk's office. and would bring those to the board for final approval. And I believe at the last meeting, I mentioned the timeline, the end of February or 1st of March, but I think we're probably looking at the 1st of March before we can start getting the checks out. But at least the counties have got equipment ordered. They know what will be coming to them by the end of January, what dollars they can expect to have reimbursed. And that will close out that 6.7 million, will close out our security grant, one of our HAVA security grants. And that is all that I have, unless there's any questions.
Anyone have any questions for Karen? Okay, hearing none. Is there any other business that any member has to bring before the board today? Hearing none, the next item on our agenda is to have an executive session pursuant to KRS 61.810, parent 1, parent M, for security reasons. Do I have a motion for the board to enter into an executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Second,
Motion by member Lewis, second by, look like member Johnson and member Lane. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the board will stand in recess for a few moments while we let our staff set everything up